I recently watched the 1979 movie The Visitor. If you love absolutely insane paranormal vintage, then this is the movie for you. If you have a low tolerance for weirdness, it definitely will not be. I happen to love absurdity, so for me, this is an overlooked gem. Really bizarre world building. I wish more sci-fi, fantasy, thriller style stories had the cojones to tell a story this cosmic in scope. It's about spiritual warfare, and I really like the lighting and cinematography despite it being sort of lower budget. The home designs are dreamy and they look like they're straight out of some kind of eco-futurist magazine or vaporwave interiors blog. Just in terms of tone and atmosphere, this movie has that beautiful mixture of elegance and gonzo violent absurdity that really only an Italian director is capable of. I think few Americans are psychologically capable of retaining so much glamour and so much lunacy in their heads at the same time. So for that reason, it's great just as an aesthetic piece. As far as its actual story goes, I mean, well, it keeps you on your toes because you literally have no idea what will happen next. But if you're looking for something, extremely coherent and normal, then again, not the movie for you. One thing that stood out to me about it is the way that it features the trope of the psychokinetic little girl, as well as, sort of combined with that, the trope of the evil child. For some reason, this trope loomed pretty large in pop culture consciousness around the 70s. Just off the top of my head, I can think of some other similar plots around that time that feature at least one of those facets. You've got The Exorcist, Carrie, Firestarter, The Omen. Just this idea of little threatening children. I haven't seen Cronenberg's The Brood, but I want to check that out as well. And I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of. So, what's with this trend? Well, I'm going to play connect the dots a little bit here, but bear with me. All of these movies are coming out during a time of intense cultural turmoil over sexuality and the family. The civil rights movement was enshrining women as a protected class with greater legal preferences. The birth control pill was unlatching sex from obligation. These forces had been in the works for a while, but in the 70s they were really starting to wash through every level of American culture. Second wave feminism was at its fever pitch, and family law in America was getting totally rewritten, and divorce rates were doubling. So, a tumultuous time for the family, for children, for girls entering into womanhood at that point. So it's in the midst of this that you start seeing all of these stories about young girls with dangerous powers, or children with dangerous powers. Think about it. The nature of femininity is changing in society. The old pathway that a girl from youth to motherhood originally took, that's dissolving. The narrative of womanhood built into traditional morality, not that it was necessarily always followed before, not that everyone followed that pathway, but everyone at least understood it. You knew what you were supposed to be doing. Now that pathway is becoming unintelligible or incomprehensible in the new cultural framework and in the new legal framework in some ways, in the new economic expectations that are made of you. There's a lot of anxiety around that, as you can imagine. And so in the midst of that, you have this kind of paradoxical story being presented. Children are dangerous, children are a threat, but they also need to be protected, and there's satanic forces coming after them. So there's this ambiguity of, is the child itself satanic or witchy in some way, or are there satanic powers coming after the child? Usually in these stories, there's a bit of both of that going on. So maybe we could trace where all of this begins in a pop culture storytelling to Rosemarys Baby, released in the summer of 1968, right during a series of global protests by youth counterculture movements and leftist college students demanding a revolution in the old way of doing things, which is really just to say demanding power and influence from the old guard. Here we could see Rosemary's Baby as a metaphor for the new age, that she's gestating, an age where a woman's child will be a threat to her, perhaps perceived for environmental reasons as a threat to the entire world. On the other end, the culmination of this anxiety in pop culture could be the Satanic Panic of the 80s. Somehow I doubt that moral panic could have happened if there hadn't been all these movies leading up to it, either about demons trying to steal your children or children being innately witchy themselves, giving people this imaginative vocabulary with which to express the anxieties that they're feeling about these new forms of abuse and broken homes that really are being unleashed in the sexual revolution. And especially anxieties about giving their children away to preschools, a practice that was being expanded and being funded by the state starting in the late 60s. Now, it's beyond my ability to verify or debunk different aspects of the Satanic Panic. I'm sure a lot of weird, nasty stuff was going on. But regardless of specific incidents, if you step back and look at the 70s and 80s, you can see that there were many demonic forces at work on a large scale in society. Things were being shattered in our culture then that are still broken today. Many women now look at pregnancy and child-rearing as a threat. And that's not a healthy mentality for a civilization that wants to survive. I'm not saying that this civilization was, orders of magnitude more healthy in just the decades or generation before, but that doesn't mean things are necessarily always getting better or progressing either. I don't believe that preserving civilization is the highest good, but I do enjoy America, and I don't want to see it vanish or totally be taken over by demons. But then again, maybe we're just too late anyway. If you can think of any other examples that I didn't mention of this trope, please let me know, and we'll see if my hypothesis holds up or not.